Hi everyone, my name is Jo and I love to read. Today I'm bringing you a fun video. I'm hoping it's going to be fun to film. It has been fun to practice it in my head. But that is the ranking of the Kingsbridge series by Ken Follett. This is going to be my ranking, my personal opinion, not meant to offend anybody if you have a different opinion to me, but please chat about it in the comments with me if you think you have a different ranking or if you agree with me or what you thought of these. Now, warning, this will include spoilers because I will be talking about big events to explain why I have enjoyed or not enjoyed parts of the book. So if you don't want to be spoiled, please turn this video off, go read the series and then come back and tell me what you thought. But let's get into it. So there's a big hole in my shelf down there, which is where the series sits. It is a four-part series, and the last one, I've actually grabbed the wrong book to begin with. There's the spoiler for it. The last one that has just been, or not just been published, I believe it came out last year, the evening and the morning. Maybe I'm being a bit premature in doing this video because I want to do it when the series is complete, but I feel like when an author does a prequel, they're pretty much done. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he'll bring something out. I know the original two books were actually written 25 years ago and he just came out with 2 books all these years later, so who knows, he might be bringing out another book and then I will have to revise this, but so far I feel like it's pretty final, I think. I'm going to be starting with my least favourite, like when I did my Earth's Children series ranking. I'll link that one up above if you're interested. That's the Earth's Children there, all those colourful books. The book that I liked the least out of the 4-part series is A Column of Fire by Ken Follett, obviously. Sorry, that's pretty much habit. This is the 3rd book in the series and it's the one that he published after such a big gap between the first 2 and then on the 25th anniversary purchased this one. When I was reading it, I couldn't really exactly diagnose what I didn't enjoy about this because the storyline is, what time period are we in? 1558. CE, which basically is like Common Era, which means the same as AD. I know AD is Latin for something, I don't know, but after death, so 1558 years after Christ, but people are now apparently using CE, which is Common Era, if you are not religious and don't wish to refer to it in that respect. By all intents and purposes, I would have thought that I was going to really enjoy the plot of this book because Catholicism is, I don't want to say at its height because I'm not sure, but it is the main religion in England in this time, and anybody that wants to be a Protestant actually has to do this in secret for fear of being fined or even being killed, because Catholicism is basically like, this is what you're going to do and you are committing heresy, I can't pronounce it, if you are studying Protestantism. So for me, I thought that it was going to be really fascinating, and to be honest, I can't tell the moment that I decided, or the style in which Follett was writing this time, to make me not as interested in this. I really don't know. As a writing exercise, if I ever decided to get this heavily invested in it again, I would really like to read this one side by side with my favourite one, because it would be fascinating to see why I cared so much about the favourite ones and why so little about these ones. I actually was feeling a bit of a drag reading this and I was not wanting to continue it, although I did actually finish it. I did read a review on Goodreads that pretty much summed up how I felt in a more cohesive way, and it was basically that we just didn't feel as close and as connected to the characters as we did in the first 2, and then it was more of a look at what was going in the world, like I said, with Catholicism versus Protestants, but not in like a compelling way, more of like a history book kind of way, told through the lives of people but not done in an interesting way. So that was really frustrating. I think as well the romance probably wasn't as strong as it was going to be. A big trend with Follett's books is it is 2 people that are almost like star-crossed lovers. The whole world wants them apart for whatever reason, or not the whole world, but the big bad guy wants them apart, or not necessarily personally them, but them being together would cause some kind of fault in their plans, so they have to work really hard as a couple to overcome the evil and eventually end up together. So all the characters do eventually end up with the people that they want to be with, but it is very difficult for them to actually get there, and they have to triumph over evil before they're actually able to be happy with their lives. However, I felt like this one was very quite convenient in the way that that happened, and that it wasn't so much of a part of the story but more of an afterthought. So we have our main character Ned, who's in love with Marjorie. They're on opposite sides because her family, which is very devout Catholics, want her to marry this particular guy, and she has to do it to be a good little Catholic girl, and so she does. And obviously they're abusing their power in that respect, but she is not as strong-willed as some of the other characters, which is a bit disappointing because it just didn't make it... I know that there are weak-willed main characters, and I know that there are, I don't want to say weak-willed, like people have different traits in different areas. It was just that she was very naive, but she wasn't able to learn from her naivety, which was really frustrating. And so of course they get thrown apart for a very long time, and there's not even sort of hints of them kind of coming back together or anything like that. And Ned actually goes off and gets married to another main character who is called Sylvia, and she is a Protestant printing stuff in secret. She is amazing. I loved her so much. But the way that they're thrown together, you'd think I'd be happy, and I was, but Ned was not in love with her because, again, theme with the star-crossed lovers things in these books is that they can't be happy with anybody else. The only time that that is untrue is in my favourite book, which I will talk about when I get there. But the majority of the time, these people are not allowed to be in love with anyone, and except for who Follett has decided that they're going to be. And I mean, of course he's an author, but it was really frustrating because Ned could have had a really great relationship with Sylvia, but he wasn't supposed to be in love with her. So even though they got married, he was not really happy. And then there was a bloody plot device where they killed Sylvia off without really needing to, or without real meaning or purpose, and it just felt like a reason so that Ned could end up with Marjorie, who was his star-crossed lover in the beginning. So that was really frustrating for me, and I don't know if I would reread this volume because of how hard it was to get through. But again, maybe as like a writing exercise alongside the favourite. My next least favourite one that's third in line is the last book in the series, which is The Evening in the Morning. It is actually a prequel book, so when that one was in 1558 CE, this one is all the way in the past to 997 CE. So that one was like 1500, this is only 900, or getting close to 1000. Thankfully, I enjoyed this one a lot more than Column of Fire. It was very easy to get through and very enjoyable, but unfortunately, again, the romance kind of killed it for me. The romance felt like a bit of a back step to the plot instead of really being a part of it and complementing it like in my favourite. Although I really loved the main heroine of this, Ragnar, who is a Norman noble who ended up marrying the wrong guy. Romance was a very central theme of the early plot for Ragnar because it was the event that actually caused her to move from Normandy over to England. She fell in love with a guy. This is an example of a main character that was naive. She was very naive. She married a man that she had seduced him really well, but she knew nothing else about him at all, aside from the fact that he was a lord from somewhere. So he was he's an earl. He's an earl, okay? So, and that was okay, but she didn't really know anything about him, about his family, about where she was going or anything like that. She was just trusting in the fact that he loved her. And he did in his own small way. And for that part, it was really engaging because I was kind of like, I want her to get what she wants, but I'm scared. And I'm like, ooh. And as it turns out, he ends up being quite an asshole. Not comparing to some of the other men in the story, he's not super bad, but he did actually divorce his first wife for Ragnar, not because him and his first wife were unhappy, but because he decided he wanted Ragnar, but then proceeds to continue to sleep with said wife and tells Ragnar that he can sleep with whoever he damn pleases, and that was not what Ragnar signed up for. But again, naivety, like they didn't really discuss this kind of thing, and just the way that it worked, they didn't actually have a lot of time to find out what each other's morals were in regards foster relationships. But the good thing about this is that Ragnar actually grows from her naivety and learns from her naivety, and she is an amazing power player, and I love how she schemes and the way that her brain thinks and the way that she just doesn't give up. And luckily she actually has the power to do it this time because she is a lord. She is part of the nobility, which can be really fun because she has a lot to play with. The downfall, I guess, of the book after this is that not a lot of romance happens aside from this for a very long time, which kind of sucks. And that's when in that middle bit I was feeling a bit like, yeah, cool, but we're just reading about the political stuff now, and I still enjoy like the political stuff. It's just that it needed a bit of a balance, and I feel like that period, I don't know if it was the middle of the book or like towards, I'm not sure where it was in the scheme of things, but it was just a little bit that I needed a bit more in between. The other main character, Edgar, was interesting but nothing special. Throughout the series, he's like the classic smarter guy that knows what he's doing and can figure things out for himself and is good and is smarter and blah blah blah. Like, I don't really have an issue with Edgar. He was just nothing special at this point. And although I was really glad that him and Ragnar ended up together, I really feel like his story, although very important because he is the whole reason that Kingsbridge, the town that it is in the last book, in the timeline, that it went from this horrible little drunk, stupid little backwoods town called Drang's Ferry and actually went to this magnificent city with, I don't know if you want to call it a city, but thriving town with all of these people and all of these assets. He is the reason that happened. So I'm really glad I got to read about him, but he was just nothing special by this point because we've already dealt with characters like him over and over and over again. The only thing that I would really say is he's really lucky to have learnt to, which, I mean, it's bad that he's had to learn this, but he did. He's learnt not to be as impertinent with the people that are in power that are assholes, which I found frustrating for that to be a reason that more bad stuff befalls on the town when a character continues to piss off these people and doesn't just bide their time and waits. Like, that is a bit frustrating for me, even though I totally understand it. So I really enjoyed that about Edgar, that he learnt that from a really early stage. My second choice, and actually when I was ruminating over it for a couple of days, it was really hard to choose between the evening and the morning and The Pillars of the Earth, so it's my second favourite. This is the first book, the one that began at all, the only one that I have in paperback, and that was really hard to read because it's so weighty. I would really love to get this in a hardback one day, and I would really like to reread this because as I was trying to decide whether to put this one in second or third spot, I was actually kind of like, because I read this one first and I feel like I wasn't really ready for a book this size and this epic when I first read it. And although it was good because I feel like it has been good in my training of being able to read books like this, I still reckon I should go back and read it to see whether I could enjoy it more, because I did actually stop halfway or about this way through, I think, when we still had this long bit to go, but the main characters were going on this epic like journey. The main dude, Jack, had gone away because he couldn't end up being with the main girl, Amelia, and then she realised that she loves him and that she shouldn't listen to what the church is saying because they already have a baby together out of wedlock, so why not be together? And she chases after him, and you think I'd be really like, oh yes, let's keep reading about it. But because the book was so big and I wasn't used to reading things this big, I was so tired by then. But I still maintain that this is my second favourite because it is so engaging. I love all the characters in here. I even really love the Priory guy, Philip. Not to say that the other Priory people aren't good. There are good and bad ones. But I feel like I felt a connection to Philip, and it's a lot more focused on his stories, whereas I feel like with these other two, even though they still feature either like a prior or a bishop or some other good leading religious man, I feel like you have more of a connection with Philip in this one, and I was really rooting for him to be able to achieve all of his successes, which are really good because a lot of his actually had to do with prosperity for the town and making people literate and all these like kind of learning things. He was actually a good one. We also follow a lot of characters in this one as well, as we do with the series, but I feel like a lot more in this one are a lot more fleshed out. So this one again features, like, I feel like I'm describing the same book over and over again, which is pretty much what this series is, but there are differences and it is really great. So what time period are we in here? We are in, it starts in 1123 CE. The main thread follows a builder called Tom, who is building the greatest cathedral for our dear Prior Philip. And then the main character ends up becoming one of his stepsons, Jack. And another main character, our leading female heroine in this one, is Alina, who she was a notable that because her dad ended up being on the wrong side of the succeeding queen. So this one features a lot of the political moves with this one. Again, we have an evil church guy as well that wants to take over, that kind of thing. That's pretty prevalent throughout the books. But this one, the clashes of the kings and queens actually mean a lot to this series, and a lot of things change depending on, there's this battle being fought between, I don't remember who they are, but it's a king and a queen, and they're both battling for their claim on England. And depending on who you're supporting and who ends up being in power and who wins what battle, that can mean a lot for the people who have said to support people. So Aliena's dad was said to actually support the queen or king, I think the king and then the queen, anyways, one of them. And then because he seemed to be such a high supporter, when the tides turn, he actually goes to jail, and thus she has to learn to make a living for herself and her brother, who still really wants to be a knight and wants to avenge his dad. And I love Alina. I love her so much. I think probably out of all the female characters, she is my favorite. I'm pretty sure, even though this isn't my favorite book, because I just love, I love her so much. I love her resourcefulness. Like, I love the fact that she pretty much made their family, like made her and her brother something from nothing after her dad was literally taken to prison. I don't know what happened with her mum. I think her mum died young or something like that. But Alina pretty much invents, or not invents, but Alina creates a business for her and her brother that basically lifts everything up, and she ends up being like this wealthy merchant who would have been a lot friggin' more wealthy if she had told her brother to stop being a knight and to actually be useful. She made this stupid promise to her dad when he went to prison that she would avenge him or whatever, or she takes this oath a lot, and that is a lot of what actually stops her from being with Jack, is her own stubbornness to let go of this stupid oath that she made to her father. So even though, like, dear, you didn't need to do that, I love her so much. She is such a real person, and I'm so happy for her conclusion. I am so happy for her conclusion, even though it is a bit frustrating to get there. And then my final book, my favorite, is the second one, World Without End. Oh man, okay. Let's start out with the first guns. Before this book, never cried in books. After this book, sobbed. Absolutely sobbed. I was sobbing. I was so distraught by what happened in this goddamn book, mainly the romance. The reason why I think I was absolutely in love with this book is, even though it was still a political good versus evil story, I loved the romance. I loved it so much. And let me tell you, this is how I know that Ken is skilled, or can be skilled. The main dude, Marathon, actually cheats on the main chick, Karis, at the beginning, out of his own just lack of self-control, and yet he was still able to redeem himself so that I was still begging these people to be together. Right? I know, right? I know. I still think he's an idiot. I still think he's an idiot for doing what he did. Anyways, I was still rooting for them to be together, and I cried because they were not together for so long for various reasons. Finally, when they could be together, Karis was not as interested for whatever reason. And then when she finally agreed to marry him and they were going to be happy together, she was charged with being a witch, and the only way to save her was to go into the nunnery. That is when I cried. When finally, after like so long of this goddamn book, we nearly got to it, and then they couldn't be together. Ever. Because if she left the nunnery, they would declare her a witch again and burn her at the stake. Of course, eventually the people that want to do that have been put to justice and they get to be together, but oh my god, like, still my beating heart. It was bloody wild ride. Oh my gosh, a bloody wild ride. And then they throw in the Black Death as well, which again, I feel like what probably also made me really interested is that I find medical problems really fascinating. And so we have Karis, who is again this really resourceful person who makes businesses for herself and makes herself so that she can earn her own income, but she also is known to associate with someone that they sort of think that she is that they sort of think is a witch. And so because she actually uses somewhat modern medicine, people think that she's a witch, but she's able to bring up these cleanliness standards when the Black Death happens. And being a nun, a lot of people go to them for help for their medical training, and she is actually able to really uplift everything. And I believe they also name a hospital after her too. This one it was also good on another romantic point because Marathon, who is again the main love interest with Karis, he goes away. And a theme in this entire series, as you know if you've read it, is the man goes away. He goes away because he can't be with the girl. Everyone except for Marathon hasn't forgotten about her, but Marathon actually does find someone. He does marry her and have a baby. But the Black Death comes and sweeps through and ends up killing his wife. You could probably think it's a bit convenient that in the same way that Sylvia died in the first book I talked about, but it felt less convenient and more genuine this way, probably because this is only the second Star-Crossed Lovers, like it's only the second book that he's used that. Probably now because that's like the third book it felt like a bit of a device, but this felt believable. And then eventually Marathon was able to end up with Karis and they were all happy and justice was dealt. So that is my series ranking. I hope that it was cohesive. I was a little bit less nervous filming this one than I was the Earth's Children ranking, but I'm still hoping that it's probably just a gush because this is a good series. And I hope you've enjoyed this. If you listened to the end, let me know what you thought. Tell me if you agree with me or not. And I will talk to you guys again next time. Bye!